Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today is another Warlock Wednesday. Woohoo! Today we shall be discussing the Eldritch Invocation, Fiendish Vigor.
Vigor. Yep, I'm sticking with it.
Man, that was fiendish.
That's what I thought too. I should do one of
Vigorous.
these. Give me one of these. There we go. So Fiendish Vigor is one of the cast at will invocations. It is you cast False Life on yourself as well as a first level spell without expending spell slot or material components. Pretty neat. False Life is also not that very complicated. I can read it real fast too. False Life says it's a first level necromancy spell. It takes an action to cast. Duration of an hour, which is a long duration. No concentration or anything like that. Bolstering yourself with a necromantic facsimile of life, you get a d4 plus 4 temporary hit points for the duration. There's an upcast, but that doesn't matter because you can't upcast this with Fiendish Vigor because you can only cast as a first level spell slot with Fiendish Vigor. This, I think, is a really interesting invocation at tables that are like not planning to go late. This is something that you definitely want to be working on or working with like the first 10-ish levels, maybe even less than that, and swap it out past that. But in those 10 levels, this will often just feel like you start every encounter with a free 8 temporary hit points. And that's pretty great.
Yeah, I like invocations that give you at will spells. I'm not normally a huge fan of what's it called? False Life.
Mm-hmm.
However, at will
when it's free.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's not like cure wounds. It's not really something you probably want to use in combat. Like, oh, I just got hit, so my false hit points have left. I should rejuvenate them. No, because like you should be mitigating the thing that's damaging you instead. However, outside of combat, that's you heal yourself up and then boost yourself up a little more. That's fun.
Agreed. It's nice that you can just recast this over and over again until you get 8 hit points. A lot of time what it looks like is when you have Fiendish Vigor, you just talk to your DM and say, okay, as long as I have a minute, I'm just going to recast this until I roll a 4 on the d4, which will happen almost immediately. So this will only take 2 or 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 5-ish tops to get your 8 temporary hit points. So every hour, as long as you spend 30 seconds casting this, you can just have 8 temporary hit points.
Yeah.
Every trap you walk into does 8 less damage. Every encounter, the first damage you take is reduced by 8. Considering this is like a minute-long cooldown, 8 temporary hit points, I think is a good way to think about it, in that you just will have this buffer of HP no matter where you go, whatever you're doing, that you can always sort of fall back on comfortably. That'll buy you an extra 2 or 3 rounds if you're playing a frontline character. Warlocks don't have a lot of defensive options that support them in the thick of combat, in hand-to-hand melee fisticuffs. Fiendish Vigor is a pretty cheap early option to do that.
Yeah, I mean it's a simple one.
Not particularly complex, no.
I guess are there any kind of builds that can milk more out of this, or I don't know.
Giving temporary HP is kind of a non-bow with Pact of the Fiend and a little bit. So Pact of the Fiend, or the Otherworldly Patron, the Fiend, gives you temporary hit points when you kill things. This can work with that, right? Like if you plan to take damage before you kill something anyway, you don't really mind, and the temp HP will come back up and go back down and stuff like that. A lot of the time, this is more anti-synergistic than synergistic with stuff because temporary hit points don't stack. You just take whatever version's the highest. So most things in the game don't give temp HP, but for those that do, that's something to make sure you're considering, right? I would probably put this on characters like the Undead or Undying Blade Locks, specifically like Warlocks taking Thirsting Blade, looking to be attacking with a great sword, or looking to be attacking with a long sword and shield or whatever. Those with Fiendish Vigor will just have more juice to stick around in fights longer for. And for the first, like, again, 7, 8, 9 levels, having that extra little padding of hit points is going to feel very comfortable. Once you get into the upper tiers, you're going to want other invocations over this more often than not. I think this is going to be a quick thing that you're not going to mind swapping out in the upper tiers for more impactful invocations. Invocations that either like Eldritch Mind depending your concentration on more important spells, or invocations that offer you grander swaths of utility, or maybe you take the other Pact of the Blade boons that sort of support it to make it more and more powerful as you go. Those are all, I think, going to be options you'll replace Fiendish Vigor with, which makes this pretty cleanly and nichely targeted at Pact of the Blade Warlocks in the early game that plan to be in melee combat. And what builds sort of work with those are pretty well established. They're your Hexblades, they're your cheap and sort of rough and dirty mid-AC frontline Warlocks.
All right, well, what about at upper tiers? If you're not planning to be a frontline character, you just you don't want to get hit at all, but you know that there's always a chance.
8 temp HP isn't. I don't think 8 temp. So based on how scaling of numbers works, by saying how scaling the number works, I mean the rate at which we scale damage in Dungeons and Dragons based on how much damage monsters do. They get more attacks that do more damage. 8 matters a lot less against things that do that much more damage. You would much rather have things that help you mitigate the effects or ways to bring those creatures down faster to mitigate their damage. 8 becomes smaller and smaller comparatively as the game goes on, especially as your hit point pool increases, right? If you're sitting on 60 hit points, 8 is a drop in the bucket to that 60 hit points.
Yeah.
If you have 6 hit points, 8 is over double it,
Yeah.
right? So the characters that care about it most are going to be the lower tier options, even in the squishier variety. But if you're not regularly spending these hit points every combat, if they're not going down consistently, the feature starts to feel a lot worse, right? You start to wish you'd taken an invocation that you're using every fight. Characters that can use it every fight are the ones I'd advocate for this. The creatures that are staying up an extra 2 rounds because they took Fiendish Vigor, those are the characters I think that want this on their sheet. If you're not readily taking damage, I don't think you can expect this to be that good, even if you've got like a spare invocation laying around. The upside's just not good enough.
Yeah. I don't know. I asked that question really just to milk a little more time out of this video, but I've got nothing else.
If there are any options out there that care about you casting necromancy spells, this is a first level necromancy spell. You can cast at will. So if there's things like the Abjurer Wizards get the abjuration thing, if they print down the road payoffs for casting necromancy spells, here you go. Fiendish Vigor can give you unlimited uses of that, which is pretty cute. I don't know of any of those that exist currently, nor do I think there are a lot of, if any, payoffs for having temporary hit points in the game. I think there should be. I think this game could use a lot more gamified build directions, right? Like having characters get bonuses while they have a specific condition, or against things with a specific condition, or with creatures with temp HP, or a bunch of different ways this game could be expanded out that it hasn't been. So, maybe in the future there's more build around directions for Fiendish Vigor, but for now it's basically just a padding of HP in the low tiers that can be nice to have. And It's not particularly complicated.
All right, well, you got a rating for this one?
I'd probably give Fiendish Vigor a 3. I think this is pretty fine on the characters that want to be the front line characters. If you want to play a Warlock that's objective is to get hit, you probably want Fiendish Vigor for the first 5 levels. Past that, you're going to look to swap it out, I think. But for doing its job of giving you some extra padding, I think the extra padding is great.
Yeah, if I have to give it a general score, I'll give it a 3. I'm thinking the score would be weighted depending on your level and your type of Warlock. But yeah, so it could go. I don't know if I'd ever give it a 5 for any of this, but it'd go a high 4, or later on down the line, higher level, not frontline Warlock, pretty low.
Yeah,
but on average, 3 sounds about right. All right, that was Fiendish Vigor. Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us. Let us know what you think down in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it, a gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.